Thank you for joining us for our first episode of People and Places, brought to you by the Media Center for Art, Education, and Technology and the Millennium Charter High School in Salinas, California. For those of you who are just learning about us, the Media Center is a program of the Monterey County Office of Education dedicated to serving all students in Monterey County. We designed this series to provide our students with real-life, project-based learning, integrating the academics of media making into real-life experience. This documentary investigates the former train that connected Monterey to San Francisco, the Del Monte Express, and students look into what is the future of sustainable transportation. Join us for an intimate look at local history and our call to action as citizens who are looking for solutions for the future.
A different way to travel existed in a time not long ago. Elegant, easeful, and a bit mysterious. Thought to be the oldest running train in the Southern Pacific System and running since the 1880s, the Del Monte Express hauled goods, livestock, and people from the Monterey Peninsula to the Presidio in San Francisco and back in formidable style. Most travelers of the Del Monte Express were executives from San Francisco who would spend the weekend in Monterey and return to the train at 7:30 in the morning. They arrived in San Francisco at 10 a.m. What a trip it must have been to escape the crowded city, finding yourself amongst the golden hills of San Jose, past the pungent garlic fields of Gilroy, to suddenly reveal the turquoise waters of the Monterey Bay. Lucky riders may have spotted a whale breaching on the way to the aquamarine inlet of Lover's Point, or marveled at the mysterious cypress trees silhouetted by the sunset. What brought people to the Monterey Peninsula in the first place? The famed retreat, the Del Monte Hotel, also known as the world's most elegant seaside resort. The Del Monte Hotel. The Southern Pacific Company built both the Del Monte Express and the Del Monte Hotel. The beginnings of what is now the backbone of Monterey, tourism. We went out into the field near the heart of our city's tourist attractions, the wharf, Cannery Row, and our beloved aquarium. Today, where the bike path connects these points of interest is where the Del Monte train once traveled, bringing passengers into Monterey.
So you guys, where we are right now, this is where the tracks once were. The Del Monte Express train traveled from Pacific Grove all the way through up to San Francisco. And when people came to visit here, this was their first stop. And do you see right across the street over there?
The Naval Postgraduate School.
The Naval Postgraduate School. That used to be the Hotel Del Monte. And people would come here to visit this luxurious hotel.
Can we go to the Hotel Del Monte?
Yes, well, we had to get special security clearance, and I'm glad I called ahead. So we're gonna go in there and investigate and get to see the hotel. Let's go to the Techmobile and let's go inside.
We were given a tour of the former Hotel Del Monte. It was a sight to behold, such elegant architecture that is still intact today.
As Charles Crocker initially built the Hotel Del Monte, he had a lot of critics who said, you simply will not get people, especially the people that you want to attract to come. They called the hotel Crocker's Folly. When Crocker cut the ribbon on June the 1st, 1880, the hotel was booked solid. It remained booked solid for the first 7 years until that fire. And in fact, in the first 6 weeks of operation alone, they had to turn down 3,000 reservation requests.
A lot of people don't realize that the Del Monte Express started in 1879 for one reason. It was to bring people to San Francisco to the Del Monte Hotel. And the Del Monte Hotel was built in order to sell the land, home sites in Pebble Beach. In fact, a lot of people don't realize that the distance from the Del Monte Hotel by horse and carriage is 17 miles, which is where the 17-mile drive came from. It is now used within Pebble Beach as the scenic drive there. So all of these developments were to basically sell the land at Pebble Beach. The Del Monte Hotel was built, and to service the Del Monte Hotel, Southern Pacific brought in the Del Monte Express steam locomotive.
You had to be wealthy to stay at the Del Monte Hotel. Day rates ran between $7 and $10 per day, which in today's currency would run somewhere between $160 and $230.
They could still wind up staying in the world's most elegant seaside resort. One should think of Hotel Del Monte as essentially a place, really like a small country, because in the later years, the hotel was comprised of nearly 20,000 acres of land. And there was a botanical garden that surrounded the hotel with exotic species from around the world. So you could come to Del Monte and you could see the Great West, and you could also see the world's oldest conifer that was 150 million years old and from far beyond the age of the dinosaurs. And it had simply managed to survive in a remote region in Chile, and now it was in Monterey.
Enchanting trees were enjoyed from 60 countries. As you strolled the grounds of the hotel, you could watch the whole world unfold through the many fascinating botanical specimens.
The scale at which the Del Monte operated was phenomenal. Del Monte was bringing about 17,000 guests to the Monterey area in each year in the 1880s. The entire population around Del Monte, in all the existing towns, Monterey and Pacific Grove and other towns that existed at that time, only had a population of about 2,000 people.
The parties were also phenomenal. When American presidents came to Del Monte, there were always great banquets and dances and receptions and special events. California became a state in 1850, but it wasn't until Hotel Del Monte opened in 1880 that an American president came to California. Rutherford B. Hayes came in September of that year. He brought an entire delegation.
And in later years, as autos emerged, it began to be used for both horse and auto racing. So it was the Del Monte Speedway. And there were polo matches. And at the bathhouse, one could swim in heated salt water inside the bathhouse. Famous guests like Phoebe Hearst, she didn't live very far away, just in San Francisco, but Phoebe Hearst would bring her family and friends to the Del Monte for the summer, and this is where they would season.
The historic Del Monte Hotel hosted luminaries from around the globe. Potentates of the day, such as Cornelius Vanderbilt and Dale Carnegie, came to bask in the mild climate and take in the glorious sights of the Monterey Bay.
And other notable guests came from Hawaii. Prince Anatso Nitobe from Japan came here specifically to write his book, Bushido, the Soul of Japan, because he knew he could read parts of his book to other patrons from around the world and get their feedback. Famous artists, famous writers, and industrialists. This was a place that drew the prominent, the famous, and the elite.
In the 1930s, New York newspaper magnate Lucius Beebe traveled in his own private luxury train car. A famous author and train enthusiast, he wrote multiple books about traveling by train in the United States.
The Gold Coast car that I remembered from being 9 years old was lavish.
It was a lucky day for 9-year-old Anne and her friend Kathy as they skipped towards the beach.
What greeted our eyes was an amazing sight, a train car sitting on the turntable at the bottom of the hill. That day in August, it was not the big black engine that we saw, but this amazing green engine. And we were sure that we had discovered either a king or a sultan, or maybe the Wizard of Oz himself had come to town.
The girls were clever and curious. They simply had to find a way to explore.
We were too small to climb the stairs up, high train car stairs. So we knocked on the side of the car to see if anybody was home. And then we chattered about what we were going to say in case anybody came to the door. So we knocked again, and the door opened. And we put on sad faces and said, "We've lost our kitten, and do you think we could come inside to see if he's hiding under a chair?" And Lucius Beebe opened the door, invited us in. He said, with a big grin, he put a little step stool down so we could step up these high stairs. And it was amazing. It was lots of red. I remember a red carpet, red velvet chair. There was a chandelier overhead, a fireplace at the end of the room. There were tassels on the curtains, very impressive to a 9-year-old. There was fringe around the bottom of a settee.
The girls witnessed firsthand Mr. Beebe's taste for opulence that rivaled the great kings of Europe. The custom car featured an observation drawing room, a dining room, wine cellar, and 3 staterooms. The girls must have been in awe.
He asked us our names. He told us that his name was Mr. Beebe, and then he asked us to tell him about the kitten. So anyway, then we got down and looked under the fringe and looked under the sofa, and of course no kitten. So he very kindly, with a smile, thanked us for coming to visit. He saw us to the door and said he hoped that we'd find our pet. And then we jumped down off that platform and ran all the way to the beach, just gleeful. We really, truly thought that he must be royalty of some kind because of all the rich fabrics and the glittering chandelier and a fireplace at the end of a train car. We were amazed.
And it wasn't just the rich and famous that found their way to the peninsula. Working folks also came in by the trainload to frolic in the bathing pavilion of the Hotel Del Monte. Some 210 dressing rooms dotted the concourse next to a giant tank 70 feet wide by 170 feet long, featuring 4 different temperatures of water for those who preferred a game of skill. A perfect 18-hole golf course provided a first-class game at the newly established Del Monte Golf Course. The Del Monte Express was a focal point for the community and the train station its iconic nest. Countless hellos and goodbyes, reunions and departures. A constant flow of memories and stories.
This is my grandmother. She's standing in front of the train at the train station 100 years ago in 1914, which is the year she got married. I'm a 9th generation in Monterey, and she being a 7th, she's the granddaughter of Monterey's first Superior Court judge, Josiah Merritt, of the Merritt House Adobe in Monterey.
The old Del Monte's arrival seemingly incorporated itself into the actual pulse of the community.
When I heard the train go by in the morning, approximately at 7:45, I knew I'd better get a move on. At that time, I was in my freshman year in high school, and we had moved here to Del Monte Beach, and the train would come by about that time, and that was like a warning whistle to get going.
Stepping aboard this commodious transport made traveling up the California coast a nearly effortless way to move from Monterey to San Francisco in style. Aside from moving people place to place, the Del Monte Express was a portal to rich experiences.
I rode the Del Monte Express with my grandfather when I was 8 years old. He took me to San Francisco overnight, And my favorite memory is the excitement of being on the train for the first time, and also going into the Emporium shopping and seeing an escalator for the first time, which I was terrified of. I had never seen moving stairs, and my grandfather went down the escalator and was begging me to come down, which I wouldn't do, so I took the elevator instead. That's my biggest memory, but it was a fun shopping trip, seeing the sights.
And that grand locomotive created quite a stir. Eager excursionists dressed in dapper business attire or their fresh-pressed finery. The traveling itself was an event.
I wore my Sunday best, and people did dress up. In fact, everyone dressed up just to walk down Market Street in San Francisco. My grandfather wore his hat, which he always wore when he went anywhere outside, and definitely a dressed-up time.
Many local residents can still recall what it was like to ride the Del Monte Express.
If you're not in a rush and you want to see America, then you take the train.
The express would glide through the majestic artichoke fields, crowned with magnificent purple coronas, then up towards the little township of Aromas, alive with the rich wafting scents of apple orchards in bloom.
The industries that were around in the Salinas Valley area, your produce was shipped by rail with a peak point in the mid-50s, which we did. They're moving 600 cars a day. That's tonnage. And it's all lettuce, and strawberries, and apples, and celery, you name it.
For first-class passengers, velvet-lined dining cars serve sumptuous meals on fine bone china. Crystal glasses toasted good cheer, and it was not unusual to enjoy a few cocktails on the journey.
Eating on the train was the most wonderful thing to me, was being able to sit while the train was moving along and being served by waiters. And it seems to me there were even fancy napkins, and it seemed luxurious because we were eating with cloth napkins, and we had, it seemed that there were crystal glasses, and everything seemed shiny and new and clean. And I remember feeling very happy and well cared for on the Del Monte Express.
Those were the days. It was so easy to get to San Francisco. Not like today with bumper-to-bumper traffic, accidents, not to mention gas over $4 a gallon.
I wish they could bring it back.
So, why did the train stop running? Our staff and team of students investigate the mysterious disappearance of the Del Monte Express. Some say the old Del Monte Express stopped because of plain loss of interest. Others say that it was more fun and convenient to drive a car. But was that all there was to the story? Did corporate greed play into the loss of this charming and efficient mode of transport? What happened in 1971 when the train stopped running? Who lobbied to keep the Del Monte Express active?
So it was a bit of a David and Goliath battle, which ultimately we won. There was a gentleman in Carmel Valley by the name of Edgar Haber who was leading a cause célèbre called Bring Back the Del Monte Express. And I wanted to lend the support of the Big Sur Gazette newspaper and interviewed him, and then produced a 4-page pullout in the newspaper called Bring Back the Del Monte Express. And he liked the pullout so much that he actually asked for, I believe, about 7,500 of them to be reprinted.
Mr. Haber knew the power of the pen was mightier than the sword and went to work.
He sent them out to the Monterey Peninsula, from which he received 2,500 responses. And of those responses, some 95% indicated, of local residents and businessmen, indicated they would use the Del Monte Express train, if it were available, to go back and forth from San Francisco to Monterey. In interviewing Mr. Edgar Haber in Quail Lodge, I realized he was the prime mover. He was the catalyst.
Mr. Haber did not get the response he was expecting.
He lobbied with all these gentlemen, all these politicians. They got a bill passed in Sacramento with a $2.5 or $3 million appropriation to restore the Del Monte Express train service between Monterey and San Francisco. Well, what happened? Well, Southern Pacific didn't want that. Southern Pacific had petitioned to even shut down the train service to Monterey and abandon the tracks. Southern Pacific wanted that for a very simple reason, because they had run passenger service into the ground because they made more money on freight service.
Mr. Keppel claims the hunger for profit didn't stop there.
So why did they want to abandon the rails? So they could sell the land. It was all profit driven. It was not public service driven. And if they had any entrepreneurial spirit, as did Ed Haber and others, they would have realized they could have capitalized on public train service to and from San Francisco and points in between. You can't find any answers if you don't ask any questions. So to solve problems, you can only start one way. You ask questions.
People are turning around up here because they know they're going to be sitting in this for at least an hour. It'd be so nice if we had a train.
What if you could avoid traffic on the congested two-lane Highway 68 or Highway 1? What if you could completely avoid all traffic jams and delays on the 101 freeway or the dangerous, windy Highway 17? What if you could enjoy your work commute to San Jose or catch a flight in San Francisco? Stress-free, hands-free, enjoying a reliable, smooth ride. And what if this alternative to driving saved you money? Are you interested now? Let's find out how much our time is really worth.
So if we take that and we multiply that by 5, we get $170.50 per week. And then if we multiply that for a whole year's worth of travel, that's $8,866 just in the value of their time. So we're going to watch a little quick clip here by our interview with Bruce Sawhill, Friends of the Rail and Trail. He's going to tell us about calculating the total cost.
Well, we have a thing called total cost of travel. And so when you take a trip, you don't just add up how much you had to pay out of your wallet, but you add up how much time it took, and you value that time. And so you're not trying to minimize how much money came out of your wallet. You're trying to minimize this sum of the value of your time plus how much money came out of your wallet.
Now to calculate out-of-pocket expenses, I've done this already. Prunedale to San Francisco, if they're driving that many days, it's about 25,000 miles per year. And with gas at $4.50 a gallon, at 25 miles per gallon, the average car, you're looking at a little over $9,000 a year just in gas expenses. So if you add that to their value of their time, you're looking at their total cost of travel is a little over $18,000 a year. So I think we have our first assignment now. I think what we need to look at is what is really the value of their time.
Right. If they were hands-free, what could people be doing?
They could be sleeping.
Yeah, they might need the extra rest, right? I think what we should do now is we should head out into the field. We should grab some cameras and we should ask people on the street what they would be doing instead of sitting in traffic, and maybe ask them how long the average amount of time they spend in traffic.
We'll split up into 2 groups and we'll go to the grocery outlet right across the street.
We took the students out into the field to gather interviews to see what the public in Salinas has to say about their experience in traffic and what would they do with their time instead.
I've spent several hours in traffic going from here to SFO.
From Monterey to Salinas, about an hour.
I'd probably pull out my smartphone and either read emails or take the iPad and read an iBook.
Either working via Wi-Fi on the internet or reading.
Reading magazines, books, checking the email.
Just sit and relax, read a book. I used to commute to Palo Alto every day from Hollister, and I would take the train from Gilroy to Palo Alto, and I just relax and read a book on the way home. I could take a nap, so it was great.
I guess it's kind of frustrating when you're trying to get someone real fast, but you can't get there really fast, right? So it's kind of frustrating.
I actually, the worst road in the world as far as traffic goes is between San Juan and Hollister, in my opinion. I know it's not Salinas, but that's where I live. I live in Hollister. And I can get from Salinas to San Juan quicker than I can get from San Juan to Hollister. So traffic's just horrible.
I fly out of SFO all the time. We currently take the bus, and a train would be a wonderful alternative.
If you got a light rail train, you get places really quick, and your time of departure is a lot more faster. So that'd be awesome to have a light rail. Yeah.
I think I'd be a fairly frequent user if it existed.
I think that it would be a great idea. I think it was done before at one time in history. So it'd be great to explore that, as long as it was, I would say, cost effective.
So, what if you are one of the lucky few who does not experience the impact of wasted time in traffic? Our students continued to question if there was enough reason for people to care about supporting passenger rail. What about sustainability on a global scale? What about the impact all this driving is having on our health? We searched for advocates of alternative transportation and found an advocacy group in Santa Cruz called the Campaign for Sensible Transportation. We interviewed Peter Scott, a local advocate and active member.
In front of your house are cars parked. In the street in front of your house, there are cars driving by. It would be nice, much more pleasant, if you didn't have any of those cars and you just were able to get around by other means. Either walking is really the primary mode of transportation. Bicycling is another mode. Public transportation, such as taking trains. All those things are important. So if we could reduce the number of cars and increase the number of people using public transportation and walking and bicycling, that would be a more sensible world in which to live. And that's why we're the Campaign for Sensible Transportation. We're advocating the use of those things in preference to this, particularly the single occupant automobile. The practical merits. You get more exercise if you're walking. You eat your big breakfast, you come out, you get in your car, and you drive it to work, and you get out and you walk 50 yards to the office door, and you sit there in front of a computer all day and you bang on the keys. There's not much exercise in that. But if you were to walk, and you maybe have to walk a quarter mile to half a mile to get on a bus or a train, or get on a bicycle and ride along the path, just like that fellow is doing over there. And then you get more exercise, you're healthier, and you can hear the birds, you'll be outside, you get more in touch with nature.
What about our local and state representatives? We took a trip up to Sacramento to ask our California State Senator Bill Monte about his thoughts regarding the benefits for the public.
You look at the traffic congestion on Highway 1 and Highway 68, a lot of families are commuting one direction or the other, from the peninsula to Salinas or from Salinas to the peninsula. and the highway plugs up. When cars are idling, they're actually giving off more CO2 emissions. So if we could reestablish that light rail service from Salinas to Monterey, I believe it would be valuable both for commuters as well as for tourism.
CO2 emissions were also a cause for concern from each of our interviews.
So in California, the transportation sector is responsible for almost 40% of greenhouse gas emissions. And so providing an alternative to the driving in a car, having other options for the commuters and drivers, provides us an opportunity to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions that cause global warming.
Monterey County had the #1 train service in the state of California, the old Del Monte Express. Presidents, movie stars, politicians, they rode that train, and it was put into service to facilitate the tourism visitation from San Francisco down to the old Del Monte Hotel. I'd like to see the return of that service, and I'd also like to see the return of the Coast Daylight, a train that connected San Francisco to LA, the two largest metropolitan areas in the state of California.
Today in Monterey County, Amtrak has one train connecting in Salinas. You have one opportunity once a day to catch the Coast Starlight traveling south to Los Angeles at approximately 10:45 a.m. You can also travel north through Oakland, San Jose, and Sacramento all the way up to Seattle, and you have one chance to get on that train at 6:30 p.m. Although this train that travels the length of the West Coast is an alternative to driving or flying, this rail service is limiting.
The problem right now is that rail service exists from San Francisco down to Gilroy, and from the south-north it exists all the way up to San Luis Obispo from LA and San Diego. But the missing link is Monterey County. Monterey County has only one train that goes through it on a daily basis. That's the Coast Starlight, but that train originates in Seattle, and it takes a long time to go from Seattle down to LA, so it's consistently late. So for the traveling public that wants to get into the Bay Area in an expeditious manner, I think we need to extend rail service down to Salinas.
What about Monterey? There are no options for direct connection east to Salinas or north to Santa Cruz and San Francisco. Traffic is highly congested on two-lane highway systems. Highway 68 and Highway 1 are your only way in and only way out. Are there plans for new, efficient passenger rail service for residents of Monterey County? Our investigation led us to the Transportation Agency of Monterey County.
Okay guys, so we booked a meeting with Christina Watson. She's the principal planner of the Transportation Agency for Monterey County. That's where we are. So I'm gonna each give you guys a question and we're gonna go in for our field report.
The Transportation Agency for Monterey County bought the Monterey Branch Line, which is the rail line that goes from Castroville to the city of Monterey, back in 2003. And in 2009, they adopted a light rail transit as their locally preferred alternative. Since that time, unfortunately, the project has sort of hit a funding wall, as it were, and doesn't have any money to move forward into the design phase. But the long-term plan is to have light rail service on the Monterey Branch Line. The first phase would connect downtown Monterey with downtown Marina. That would alleviate a lot of the traffic that you see now on Highway 1 during rush hour, going south into Monterey in the morning and then coming north in the evenings. So this is something that we desperately need, and we are working to apply for the funding for that project.
When is the light rail project planned to begin?
Without the funding, we can't really give a really good date for initiation of service.
How much is it going to cost to build the train?
So we have an estimate of $145 million to do the light rail service for phase 1, which is Monterey to Marina.
Why isn't the funding available?
The reason that there's no funding available has to do with federal and state funding budgets for transportation and especially for transit. At the federal level, the source of funding that we would like to apply for this light rail project is called the Capital Investment Grant Program, also known as New Starts or Small Starts. This project, costing in the range of $145 million, would qualify for a Small Starts grant. Unfortunately, the Capital Investment Grant Program is really oversubscribed. It's very competitive. And for example, last year in the Transportation Authorization Bill, they authorized it at $1.9 billion per year. That sounds like a lot of money, but that actually wasn't even enough to fund the existing commitments. So new projects did not have a chance of getting in for new funding. So that's just an example of one of the reasons why it's really hard to find transit funding.
We're looking at, like, just in the meantime right now for the phase one is just getting this part, and then in years to come the next phase is happening.
Once we build the ridership and show that we have the demand and the interest in having higher quality, better transit service on the peninsula and around the whole Monterey Bay region, then more political support will be built with that ridership demand, and more funding could potentially be acquired through that.
How can the people help?
So one way that people can help with this project is by communicating with your publicly elected officials and telling them that you support rail service and high quality transit for the Monterey Peninsula and the Monterey Bay area.
This has us all asking, what is the future of transportation? What do our elected officials have in mind?
I think we're very well positioned to get this going. It's been a long time. It takes an immense amount of time to move these projects forward. The one good thing about rail, though, is that unlike most of the other land use discussions and decisions that I was talking about earlier, the rail comes with minimal, if any, controversy. There's nobody really in opposition to a rail project that's an extension of an existing service.
So, what is being actively planned?
The prioritization of the rail projects in Monterey County has been that we would do the implementation or extension of the capital corridors down to Salinas first, and then we would work on the more complicated project, which is the light rail project on the right-of-way that exists now. The extension of the capital corridors train down to Salinas does not really necessitate any new infrastructure. The line's there, trains operate on that track now already, so it's really a matter of just continuing a train on that now stops in Gilroy down to the peninsula.
How will light rail impact our community?
Well, light rail is a fixed guideway means of moving people through a community in what is theoretically a train, but it's of a different mode of transportation. It's got different power than you would see in heavy rail. A heavy rail train would be like what Amtrak operates. Light rail operates in municipalities and in cities and is not part of a larger network, but simply a connective mode of travel within a fixed jurisdiction. Light rail was chosen over bus rapid transit because it's a more effective operational mode of transit.
So, do people want the train to return to the Monterey Peninsula?
Well, I am a very, very strong advocate for rail.
I wish they could bring it back. It won't come back. My personal opinion is it won't come back, simply because money.
I would like to see the Del Monte Express come back. I think it would be a wonderful way for people to travel and not have to drive their cars.
I would love to be able to take a train from right here down to Monterey. You know, it goes by one of the most scenic places in the country, along the shore and across Elkhorn Slough and all through there. And it would be a marvelous ride. And if there were a trail next to the tracks, you know, I could ride my bicycle, which is parked over there, and I could ride my bicycle all the way to Monterey, and it would be a marvelous, you know, excursion. I would get lots of exercise and be able to stop and picnic on the beach and all kinds of wonderful things, be out in the fresh air. That's what I personally would like to see with this rail line and the rail trail next to the rail line. It would be a marvelous addition.
So it seems most people want it back, but many are concerned about the costs.
The costs of highway widening, well, first of all, it costs a lot of money to widen a highway. And so, you know, when people here look, we paid something like $20 million for this entire rail corridor. That's $20 million could have been used to widen maybe 1 mile of highway. and for the least expensive kind of stretch of a mile of highways. So we get 32 miles of rail corridor for the same price as 1 mile of highway widening.
There's a group out there that, quite frankly, just doesn't like transit because they say it's subsidized, that, you know, you have to give some subsidy to the bus, you have to give some subsidy to the train out of the general fund from the state of California. I would argue that the car has more subsidy than any other form of vehicle. It's just hidden. You have the Department of Motor Vehicles, you have Caltrans, you have a gas tax, you have the city highway department, you have all of these, you have the highway patrol, you have all of these costs that nobody sees. They just think the cost of a highway is asphalt, paving, and grading. There's a lot more to the operations of your highway system than there is to the operations of a transit system. It's just a hidden subsidy.
So, what is the best way to get results?
I think it was Roosevelt who said, somebody came to him and said, I have a wonderful idea. And he told the idea, and Roosevelt said, yes, that's a great idea. Now make me do it. And that's what we need to do to politicians.
And in a last-minute maneuver, Mr. Sawhill and the Friends of the Rail and Trail found a little theatrics can go a long way.
A bunch of us showed up in Sacramento with these train hats and packed the auditorium, and I think commissioners remember things like that because they have a lot of boring things to vote on, and this was interesting.
I've been pushing rail projects for over 20 years. I've been on the Transportation Agency for 22 years, and it's finally unbelievably refreshing to see the legislators in the state of California saying, you know what, we should make rail a priority. We should prioritize it over highways. And for the Senate to have formed what they call their legislative leadership group. They met for the first time last Wednesday. I testified before that board, and they were glad to see the local officials coming up and saying, we need more rail service. We need to bring back that sort of rail renaissance that we've been talking about for a long time. Not the romance of the rail, but the actual practical implementation of rail service.
Well, it's very important that our publicly elected officials see that there is public support for these rail projects. When the elected officials see that there's public engagement and interest in this, then it increases the visibility of the project and increases the willingness of our officials to go and rally for funding and get the projects built.
The Friends of the Rail and Trail have worked for over a decade, advocating the acquisition of the rail line in order to build a rail and trail project in Santa Cruz.
It took a long time. It was a lot of winning hearts and minds, and so a lot of editorials. I think we wrote over 10 years, dozens of editorials to the Santa Cruz Sentinel, and what we found most effective was just presenting the facts again and again. What advantages could be gained from having rail and trail service along the rail line. We were trying to get the attention of it. It was the RTC, the Regional Transportation Commission. And so we had a letter writing campaign, and I think it was probably 50 to 100 letters.
Inspired by the advice of the experts they interviewed, the students of Millennium Charter High School rolled up their sleeves, went to work, and gathered over 100 signatures to take to Sacramento in support of TAMC's light rail project, which connects Monterey to Marina, providing an alternative to Highway 1.
Hey guys, so get out your pens and pencils, and they're going to give you guys a letter.
Their letters also supported the Capital Corridor extension, which will connect San Jose to Salinas and providing much-needed relief to the highly congested U.S. Highway 101. Although the students wanted to take the train, they thought it would be important to mention that they could not make the train and bus schedule work to take a trip to Sacramento. The students had to hit the highway instead to keep an appointment with the California State Senator Bill Monning. The journey was a success, and the students' message was heard loud and clear.
I'm a big supporter of light rail. I'm also a big supporter of Millennium Charter School, and just want to applaud all of you who have worked to bring that dream into focus and into reality, because it's this type of outreach and connectivity between the community and Sacramento that will help move us in Sacramento and hopefully better inform constituents in the district that I represent. So, thank you.
It's up to us to take action, show interest, and tell our elected officials that it's time to get the train back on track. What can you do? Write a letter of support for development of passenger rail in Monterey County. Go to this website. Send an email directly to Senator Bill Monning through their online website, or you can mail a letter to Senator Bill Monning, State Capitol, Room 4066, Sacramento, California 95814. You can attend public meetings once per month at TAMC office in Salinas, first Monday of every month, 3 p.m. tamcmonterey.org. Join the Rail Passenger Association of California. Here is their website. Commit to taking the train when you can. Vote in support of passenger rail transportation with your dollars.
So, what can you do today? Work together to try to improve the situation. Try to make it, as we say in Hawaii, mo better, mo faster.
How do we get that to happen? Well, it needs funding and it needs interest by people, and so you do what you can to publicize the availability and the desirability of taking rail. It reduces greenhouse gases, it reduces the need and the use of single-occupant automobiles on the highways, and provides an additional transportation mode to get around in the county.
Young people can make a difference, will make a difference, and will have to make a difference, because the future is in their hands, not ours. How will they make a difference and what they're going to do? That's a good question. I think the key thing to do is to articulate the problem and then let them explore and brainstorm possible answers. They'll come up with it. We're Americans.
Thank you for watching the MCAET presentation of People and Places, the Del Monte Express. This presentation was designed to teach our students how to build entertaining and illuminating media on timely topics that impact our area. Through this process, the students learned how to start an investigation from an idea, locate interview subjects, and analyze the data collected. We hope you've enjoyed this presentation of People and Places, and we look forward to bringing you more like it in the following year.